Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CALeVIP Golden State Priority Project Requirement webinar. Next slide, please. My name is Peter Caldwell from the Center of Sustainable Energy, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. Fidel Leon Green will be today's speaker and will walk you through the Golden State Priority Project requirements. After Fidel walks us through these requirements, he'll be joined by Brian Fauble from the California Energy Commission to answer any questions you have on the project. Next slide, please. The participants can submit any questions in the chat box at any time during the presentation. Please do so as we begin the presentation and throughout the whole discussion. We will have a very large group today, and if any technical difficulties occur, we apologize in advance for that. If you miss any part of this webinar, please contact us and we will display a link later where you can get a copy of the presentation. I will now pass it on to Fidel to start today's webinar. Fidel.
Thanks, Peter. In today's webinar, we will reiterate the CALeVIP project goals and priorities. We will discuss general eligibility requirements for the Golden State Priority Project. We will walk through the new application selection process, and we will explain some new tools and resources we are making available on our website. A reminder that at the end, we have set aside some time to answer questions that you may have. So as we go through the webinar, please submit your questions through the chat and we will answer them at the end. The overall goal of the CALeVIP project is to quickly and efficiently deploy EV charging stations throughout California in support of the state's zero-emission vehicle goals. To achieve this overall goal, we're committed to prioritize installation projects that are ready to go and provide assistance with application and project management tools. We're also committed to focusing on processing applications as quickly and efficiently as we can and continue looking for ways to keep improving this process so that you can quickly get back to what you do best, which is build charging stations. And finally, we want to ensure that the installation projects that we fund are not just increasing the number of charging stations available to EV drivers, but that they are increasing access to charging stations in the most vulnerable locations of the state. To do this, we're partnering with the Central California Asthma Collaborative and Grid Alternatives, who will help us conduct education and outreach to community-based organizations and other local partners. Our first CALeVIP project under the new selection methodology will be the Golden State Priority Project, which is the DC fast charger only project. The Golden State Priority Project splits up the state's counties into 4 regions: the Central Region, the Eastern Region, the Northern Region, and the Southern Region. Much thought and analysis were put into the definition of each region, which included the following considerations among others. 1, we wanted to keep the regions contiguous instead of the checkerboarding the regions, which was some key feedback that you, the public, provided in the May workshop. We want to ensure each region had similar concentrations of population and avoid grouping smaller population centers with overly large metropolitan areas to the extent possible. Finally, we wanted to minimize the total number of regions for program simplicity and to increase the speed at which funding would be available to the entire state. Similarly, funding for each region was determined based on a variety of factors, including but not limited to the percentage of territory containing a census tract designated as a disadvantaged or low-income community, existing and projected electric vehicle demand, and funding allocated by previous CALeVIP projects. As a result, the first application window will provide 30 million for DCFC rebates, 20 million in the eastern region, and 10 million in the central region. Here is a full list of all the counties that the central region and the eastern region are composed of. As the name of the incentive project implies, the project will focus on priority populations, which includes disadvantaged communities as defined in the California Environmental Protection Agency's May 2022 final designation of disadvantaged communities, and relies on the updated CALenVIP 4.0. This also includes low-income communities as defined as census tracts that are either at or below 80% of the statewide median income, or at or below the threshold designated as low income by the California Department of Housing and Community Development's revised 2021 state income limits. The Golden State Priority Project will only reserve funding for sites located within these census tracts, though subsequent incentive projects may reserve funding for sites outside of these census tracts. To apply for rebates under the Golden State Priority Project, applicants must be the owner of the installation site being applied for, or demonstrate authorized agent status through submission of a site verification form with the rebate application. Applicants must be a business with a valid California business license, a nonprofit organization, a California Native American tribe, or a public or government entity based in California. These requirements are the same as those for previous CALeVIP incentive projects. Requirements for the installation site include ensuring premises are well lit, secure, and in compliance with all relevant laws, ordinances, rules, codes, standards, and regulations. The charging station at the installation site must be publicly available 24 hours per day, every day. However, due to feedback received on this requirement, parking lots and parking garages are exempt from this requirement. Instead, charging stations at these sites must be available at least 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, excluding holidays. Regarding the number of connectors at the sites, all sites must have at least 4 active connectors, and no more than 20 active connectors will be considered when reserving rebate funding. We'll dive a little deeper into this active connector definition shortly, but a high-level explanation is that it refers to the number of the connectors that can concurrently charge a vehicle at the site. Of course, just like with previous project, there is no limit to how many connectors you install. In fact, we encourage the installation of additional connectors. If you do go above and beyond and install more than 20 active connectors, the cost for these additional connectors will still count towards your total eligible costs, helping you maximize the final rebate payment that you receive. On the topic of installing connectors, all rebates issued through the Golden State Priority Project are subject to California Public Utilities Code 740.20, which states that 25% of the total electricians on site at all times must hold valid EVITP certification. So please keep that in mind as you begin planning for your installations. Additionally, for those of you who do not already know, EVITP has recently transitioned their examinations to an online format. This means that all EVITP coursework and all EVITP examination can now be done online. For more information, please go to www.evitp.org or contact EVITP at info@evitp.org. Here is a list of the eligible site types. I won't go through them all, but a few new site types to CALeVIP are business districts, community centers, large format retail centers, and places of worship. And with that, we've reached the first poll question of the day today. This time we're curious about how much experience you have installing DC fast chargers. Are you still in the learning phase? Have you worked with someone else that installed a DC fast charger? Have you installed a few DC fast chargers? Or do you install DC fast chargers for breakfast? I'll give everyone a minute or so to answer and take a quick stretch break. Okay, let's close the poll and see who we've got in the room today. So it looks like, actually, I cannot read these percentages, so if someone could assist me with communicating the results.
So what I'm seeing is 43% are learning more about this and have yet installed a DC fast charger. 39% are the ones that have installed it for breakfast. And the 10% is work with an EV provider in the past, and only 8% have worked with an EV provider that have installed. So large majority have either just learning about it, split between people that have installed a great deal.
Great, thank you, Peter. Thanks everyone for taking the time to answer. So as promised, let's dive into some definitions for DC fast chargers. The number of active connectors on a site is essentially equal to the number of connectors that can concurrently supply the rebated power level at any time. The way this is determined is by looking at the guaranteed output of each concurrently powered connector. This means we'll look at the maximum power output that is guaranteed to be available at the connector when all concurrently powered connectors are in use. For example, let's take a DC fast charger that is capable of outputting 350 kilowatts of power at any one time. And let's say it is configured such that it has 4 total connectors. Out of the 4 total connectors, 2 of them can be powered at the same time at 175 kilowatts each. This means that while the charger has a total of 4 connectors and a 350 kilowatt power output, it is considered to have 2 active connectors, and each active connector has a guaranteed output of 175 kilowatts. Thus, this charger is eligible for 2 rebates at the 175 kilowatt rebate tier. What do these rebate tiers look like for the Golden State Priority Project? Well, I'm glad you asked. Rebates for the Golden State Priority Project will cover up to 50% of your total approved costs. This is a change from previous CALeVIP projects and is meant to increase upfront financial commitment from applicants and thus increase the likelihood of project completion. This 50% is capped at the following amounts per rebate tiers. The first rebate tier is from a guaranteed output of 150 kilowatts to under 275 kilowatts. Chargers in this rebate tier are eligible for up to $55,000 per active connector. This does not mean that rebates under the Golden State Priority Project, this does mean that rebates under the Golden State Priority Project will not be awarded for DC fast chargers under 150 kilowatts, which was a key piece of feedback we received from the May workshop. The second rebate tier is for chargers with guaranteed outputs of 275 kilowatts and beyond. Chargers in this rebate tier are eligible for up to 100,000 per active connector. Going back to our minimum and maximum rebate disbursements of 4 and 20, respectively, on slide 13, a charging station with 4 active connectors in the lower rebate tier can receive up to $220,000. On the other end, a charging station with 20 active connectors in the highest rebate tier can receive up to $2 million. This constitutes the maximum amount of rebate funding we'd be able to award any single site. So how does a charger qualify for these rebates? For starters, the charging installation itself must be a new installation, a stub-out or make-ready installation, where some preliminary conduit and wiring has already been completed, or a replacement installation. For a replacement to be eligible, equipment being replaced must be DC fast chargers, and the power output of these chargers must be below 40 kilowatts. The DC fast chargers themselves must be completely new equipment installed for the first time. And they must use a CCS connector or permanently affixed and integrated CCS adapter. The DC fast chargers may still use CHAdeMO and/or Tesla connectors, but these will not be considered when determining the amount of rebate funding to reserve for your site. This one is a significant change from previous CALeVIP requirements and is prompted by the increased adoption of the CCS standard by passenger vehicle automakers in the North American market. In addition to the CCS requirement, DC fast chargers must be networked, which has been slightly redefined. To be considered as networked, a DC fast charger must use Wi-Fi, Ethernet, or cellular to connect to a back-end network. The charger must also be capable of over-the-air updates and be capable of utilization data collection. As with previous CALeVIP requirements, DC fast chargers must have at least 5 years of networking services, which are eligible towards the total approved costs. Finally, DC fast chargers must provide at least 150 kilowatts of guaranteed output at each active connector. They must list the use of an OCPP implementation 1.6 or later on the product specifications sheet, and it cannot require a subscription or membership to dispense energy. If payment is required, an EMV chip reader, mobile payment device, and a toll-free number must be physically located on the charger or on a kiosk serving the charger, consistent with the California Air Resources Board's EVSE regulations. Furthermore, certification to either UL 2202 or 9741 are required as being listed as eligible, for the Golden State Priority Project on the CALeVIP website. Additional requirements that will kick in for funds reserved after July 1st, 2023 include Energy Star certification, at minimum, both a subset and security certificate for OCPP 1.6 or later, and this requirement will be increased to 2.0 by 2025. Lastly, self-attestation to CEC of being hardware ready for ISO 15118 will be required. To be considered hardware ready, a charger must include support for PLC-based high-level communication, the secure management and storage of keys and certificates, TLS 1.2, remote updates to activate or enable ISO 15118 use cases, and being networked. We've reviewed our database of chargers against the minimum requirements of the Golden State Priority Project that I just discussed. And all of the models and configurations listed here have been verified to meet them. However, we need your help. If you don't see your charger on the list and think it should be or aren't sure if it should, please contact us to begin the verification process. November 15th is the last day to provide us with information on your charger and still have it be available once the application window opens. After that, we'll continue accepting submissions, but we will not be able to update the list of eligible chargers until after the application window opens. New to CALeVIP are minimum requirements for network providers to be eligible for the Golden State Priority Project. These include provide networking services for EV charging stations, have a signed data sharing agreement in place with the Center for Sustainable Energy, and work with us to implement a data transfer mechanism with the required data in an agreed upon format and frequency. This list summarizes the key fields required to be transmitted through this data transfer, though a more comprehensive list will be provided in our implementation manual for the project. Furthermore, these are the vendors we have already finalized a data sharing agreement with for CALeVIP. If you'd like to begin this process, please reach out to us at the email listed here. And similar to the eligible equipment list, to be listed on the eligible network provider list at the start of the application window, you'll need to have a finalized data sharing agreement by November 15th. After that, we'll continue accepting submissions, but we will not be able to update the list of eligible network providers until after the application window opens. So now we're at today's poll question number 2. Please let us know what your experience is applying for EV charger rebates. There's 5 answer choices on the screen. Please select the one that best represents you. I'll give everyone a minute or so to answer and take a quick water break. Okay, let's close the poll. And Peter, if you could help me out with the results again.
Sure. It looks like the leader here is I have researched it, but have not yet applied yet, followed by a very experienced group. I've applied for many different rebates and received many. And then we have almost a 3-way split between still trying to understand EV rebates, have applied, and have been selected for one. But the 2 largest ones is I have researched it, but not yet applied, followed by I've applied many different rebates and received many.
Great, thank you, Peter. Okay, there we go. Yeah, thank you everyone for your responses. They're very helpful to us. So as we've heard feedback regarding first come, first served, we're implementing a new application selection methodology. The first component of this change is the introduction of application windows. These will be long periods of time during which you are able to fill out, save, edit, and submit your application. For this first application window, it will be open for 45 days. So the timeline looks like this. Starting today, all eligible categories of costs can be covered by a rebate. We'll go over these shortly. Then at the end of this year, a landing page with a new look and feel will open. Approximately 60 days after that, in January 2023, the first application window for the Golden State Priority Project will open. The window will then remain open for 45 days, after which we will allocate all funds within 30 days. So what this means is that as of today, you have approximately 6 months to finish submitting your application. During the application window, you're not just able to fill out, save, edit, and submit your application. You can also contact us for any assistance completing your application and submitting your documents. Please take advantage of this resource as we will expect all your documents and submissions to be in order when we are reviewing them. This will help us let you know faster about whether your application has had funds reserved or not. Please also note that once a document is uploaded in your applicant dashboard, it cannot be corrected. So please only upload documents once you are sure they are ready for submission. Also, please note that all applications must be submitted prior to the close of the application window, as we will not be accepting applications on a continuous basis, and only one application per site will receive rebate funding, regardless of your site's size. Our second major change to the selection process is the use of priority tiers. One of the key commitments of this incentive project is to prioritize installation projects that are as ready for construction as possible. These priority tiers are how that happens. What we'll do is we'll make sure that a site verification form is submitted, if applicable, and then we'll review the documents you've submitted as your permit application and utility service application package. If you've submitted the minimum requirements, which we'll review shortly, you'll meet our minimum readiness requirements and be placed in our lowest priority tier as ready to go. If you've submitted an issued permit or the final utility service design, then we'll bump you up to the second priority tier as design approved. If you've managed to obtain both an issued permit and the final utility service design, then you'll be in the highest priority tier as ready to build. Note that in all cases, construction cannot have started prior to the close of the application window. After your application is assigned a prioritization tier, they'll be grouped together by tier number and randomly assigned a spot in the queue, with the highest prioritization tier applications being grouped at the front of the line and the lowest prioritization tier applications being grouped at the end of the line. This means that the more ready your installation project is to start construction, the more likely it will be to reserve rebate funding. Once the queue is created, our team will review the applications in queue order to verify that all minimum requirements have been met. Once this verification is complete, our team will reserve funds for your application and you will receive a funds reserve email notifying you of this action. After this, you'll have 450 calendar days to complete the rest of your project and submit all required documents. All payments will be made at the end of the process as one single rebate payment. If your application unfortunately does not have rebate funds reserved for it, you will still receive an email letting you know of this result. In addition, we'll let you know the reason your application was not selected so that you can continue to improve your installation project's construction readiness and apply with a higher priority tier next time an application window opens for your region. At the end of this process, if there are any funds left over or an applicant cancels their funding reservation, these funds will roll over into the subsequent window for this project. This means we will not have any waitlist for applicants to wait in for funding. Here is a list of required documentation throughout the process. First, you'll need to submit a completed site verification form, providing confirmation that the site owner has authorized you, the applicant, to install the equipment at the site. Or you could be the site owner yourself. You must also complete a permit application package or utility service design package. By 60 days from funds reserved, you must submit a copy of your issued permit and final utility service design if you haven't already done so. And you must submit a copy of the order for your equipment, be it the distribution equipment, transformer, or your charger. A permit application constitutes the following: the permit application submitted to the permitting agency, a copy of the plan set submitted with the permit application, and a receipt for paid plan check fees if applicable. Or you can submit your issued permit. A complete utility service design package constitutes the following: utility service application submitted to the utility, a copy of the plan set or electrical drawings submitted with the utility service application, and a receipt for paid engineering advances where applicable. Or you could provide the final utility design. Every 90 days from funds reserved starting at day 120, we'll ask you to submit a progress questionnaire response for each application to meet progress checkpoint and retain funds reserved. And by 450 days from funds reserved, we would like you to complete the installation data form online with your costs, installation, and charger info. Submit all copies of your paid invoices, including design, installation, and equipment invoices. Provide a network agreement attestation and a copy of your network agreement or contract, a copy of your final inspection card, and at least 2 photographs of installed and operational chargers. Now, to reiterate, the goal of this incentive project is to deploy DC fast charging in disadvantaged and low-income communities as quickly and efficiently as possible. To achieve this, we'll need to work together to minimize project cancellations and rebate application extensions. To this end, we would appreciate your input on the following 3 questions. If any single contractor or applicant demonstrates abnormally high cancellation or extension rates, should there be a penalty for this contractor or applicant? Okay, thanks. Let's close the poll, please.
In looking at the results, it's a 58-42 split. 58%, the majority are saying yes, there should be some penalty involved. 58%.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Our next question is, if there should be a penalty, what metrics should we use to determine whether the penalty should apply. Okay, let's close the poll, please.
In looking at the results, at 58%, a high number or percentage of project cancellations, followed by both the applicant extension being provided. So it looks like largely based on the penalty should be a high number or percentage of project cancellations.
Great, thank you, Peter. So next question, if a penalty is determined to be applicable, what should this penalty be? Okay, let's close the poll, please.
The results are showing that probation or non-participation of 6 to 12 months is the largest response at 37%, followed by none, and followed by probation or non-participation of 1 to 2 projects at 24%.
Great, thank you, Peter. And thank you everyone for providing your responses. They will prove to be incredibly useful as we continue to move forward with this. So thank you all for your feedback. In support of this effort, we've also developed some tools to help all applicants manage their rebate applications and installation projects. Actually, can everyone see the slides right now? I'm still seeing the poll up.
We're just seeing the poll as of now.
Sorry about that, Fidel. I'm just trying to change it back to you. There's a little bit of technical difficulties here. 1 second.
No problem. Thanks everyone for bearing with us. All right, thanks Bridget for getting that fixed. So as I was saying, in support of this effort, we've also developed some tools to help all applicants manage their rebate applications and installation projects. The most significant tool is the Construction Progress Tracker. This tool will help applicants manage all their Golden State Priority Project application timelines in one place and help everyone visualize where in the process each installation project is. Key actions and milestones will also be called out in the tracker to help identify any urgent items needing attention. Furthermore, this tool will help bring transparency to everyone in the process, help drive larger analyses on root causes of delays, provide advance notice of a project needing an extension, help inform future policy that is rooted in your project's construction progress, and ultimately allow for a faster deployment of charging infrastructure. To achieve this, the applicants will have the following responsibilities in the tracker. First, set up a free account on Teamwork. Then agree to receive reminder notification emails. Then update tasks and milestones based on project progress. Respond to the periodic surveys at 90-day intervals that I mentioned previously. And continue to upload all your required documents into Salesforce. So with that, I'll turn it back to Peter, who will moderate the question and answer session this morning. Peter?
Thank you, Fidel, for the great and detailed recap of the Golden State priority project requirements. A lot of detailed information in there. For those of you that have actually put your questions in the chat box, thank you very much for that. We're going to give you another minute for others to submit questions. What I'd like to do is have Fidel and Brian be at the ready. We're going to be reading the questions in a minute. So again, please add any questions that you have in the chat box, and we'll be taking 1 minute just to sort and make sure the questions are all answered. So it will be Fidel and Brian in 1 minute. All right, let's start the questions off with Fidel. Fidel, if a charger has one proprietary connector and one CCS connector, how much would the rebate be?
So the rebates are only based on only calculated based on the number of CCS connectors in terms of how much is reserved for your site. So the proprietary connector would not be considered in that reservation of the funds. It would only be based on that one CCS connector.
Thanks, Fidel. Fidel, will there be milestone payments for the Golden State priority projects?
No, there will not be any milestone payments. All payments will be lump sum at the very end.
Thank you. Fidel, another question for you. Is it presently underdeveloped sites eligible? And I'm not fully clear on how someone has defined underdeveloped sites. Maybe you can talk a little more about what sites are eligible.
It sounds to me like this is an undeveloped site, so a completely new construction. These are eligible, and I guess the question is to define the undeveloped site, and my understanding would be that this is a site without any construction in it, though that might be handled more on a case-by-case basis.
And I'll add to that, this is Brian with the California Energy Commission. I'll just add that, as Fidel's saying, if you have a site that's pretty much a dirt lot and you are going to install, for example, a gas station, which is one of our eligible site types, we would say on these undeveloped gas station to be is eligible, but we greatly caution adhering to the requirements here that once your rebate's reserved, you have 15 months, or I believe that's right, 15 months to get your completion full install done and operable and open for public use. So if you can't have this full site open, but the charger is installed, the chargers are not accessible and they won't be considered completed. And so if you can't complete a brand new construction in less than 15 months, we do not recommend you apply.
Thanks, Brian. Fidel, question for you. It revolves around the next region. When will the Southern California region be eligible to apply?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to kick this question over to Brian.
Yeah, so at this time, again, we are only funding the eastern and central, or sorry, the two regions we stated, and the additional regions will be considered once CEC's funding has been understood of our process. Again, we get budgets in July normally. We still haven't got the full budget from the state legislature yet for EV charging. So hopefully towards the end of this year or around the launch of the first project, we will have better information about moving forward with next releases. So I'd say just subscribe and stay tuned for early Q1 announcements on additional funding for additional regions.
Thank you, Brian. Fidel, will Tesla or CHAdeMO qualify for rebates?
No, so we will base the rebate calculation or reservation on only the CCS connectors. You may install Tesla and CHAdeMO connectors, and their costs may count as eligible costs, but the rebate amount the rebate cap that is determined will not be based on how many CHAdeMO and Tesla connectors are on your site.
Fidel, can you talk about the non-removable adapter?
Yes, that's correct. CCS connector and or a non-removable fully integrated adapter for CCS. So say if you have a CHAdeMO connector and there is an adapter that it's fully integrated into the charger, there's no way it will be removed, then that connector could be considered as a CCS connector and thus be eligible for rebates.
And I'll also just add on that while those examples, Tesla connector with an adapter for CCS would be eligible, or a CHAdeMO connector with a CHAdeMO to CCS adapter would be eligible, those still have to deliver the minimum power requirements of 150 or over 275 as well.
Brian, quick question for you. Is this project just for DC fast chargers or level 2 rebates available as well?
Good question. CALeVIP 2.0. So all CALeVIP projects moving forward will only be DC fast chargers. The CEC awarded 2 block grant implementers awards. CSE doing CALeVIP is one, and CalStart doing Communities in Charge is the other. CalStart's Communities in Charge project will be doing rebates for level 2 chargers only, and they will have more information coming out. They've had a couple of public sessions, but they are planning a public workshop, I believe, for this month or early next month, but more will be released in the coming weeks or so. There is a docket on the CEC's webpage for Communities in Charge. It is 22-EVI-02, and I recommend you sign up for that, or go visit that and sign up for the email listserv for more information.
Brian, question for you. You said DC fast chargers would be capped at least 150 kW. What about the 50 or 75 kW chargers? Are those also eligible?
They are not moving forward in CALeVIP. All connectors must be capable of delivering at least 150 kilowatts. So a charger, again, that is only 50 or only 100 will not be eligible. If you have a charger that can simultaneously charge 2 vehicles, that charger must at least be 350 for 2 rebates. If your charger can simultaneously charge, but say one's getting 150 and one's getting 50, you will only get 1 rebate.
Thank you, Brian. Dale, question for you. Was the eligible equipment list every eligible charger, or is that just a sample from a larger list?
So those are the chargers we have to date verified as eligible. It's not the complete list because we are requesting that manufacturers submit their equipment to us if they believe they meet our requirements, or if you're unsure if it meets our requirements, we'll review them for you. So we're hoping this list will grow as more manufacturers submit. But to date, that is the list of every eligible charger for the Golden State Priority Project. For other CALeVIP existing projects, you should check out our CALeVIP page, eligible equipment list. We have one there for each one of our projects.
Thanks, Fidel. Next question. If charger registration is submitted after 11/15, is it not going to be registered for the first project? Could you explain the 11/15 date?
Sure, that is the deadline for it to be available upon opening of the application window. We will continue accepting submissions and we'll continue adding chargers throughout the application window as requested and as they become verified. It's just not as certain because you won't have opened right at launch, but we'll continue accepting those submissions and work with you to try to get it in if we're really running down to the wire.
Yeah, and I'll just add that again, that deadline is for us to have it visually shown on the application window, and the application itself when the window opens. And we don't want to update it during the window because again, that might be technical and we don't want to mess with it. What applicants are allowed to do is select one of our eligible chargers, and if another charger becomes eligible during your project timeline, you can request to change your chargers, but be aware that request is not an authorized justification for an extension. So if you're going to change your chargers at X point on your timeline, you're still going to have to complete your installation within the original 15 months. So plan accordingly on what chargers you're choosing. And for manufacturers, please reach out to CSE and Fidel as soon as possible so we can get you listed.
Thanks, Brian. Multi-point question here. Maybe we can start with Fidel. Fidel, can you just remind the group how much funding will be available in the central and eastern regions with the $30 million? And then
Sure.
Brian, you could take the second part of this is when will additional regions open? Maybe you could start with that, Fidel.
Of course. So the first launch is, you're correct, the central and eastern region. Total $30 million. The central region will be allocated $10 million, and the eastern region will be allocated $20 million. Brian, over to you for when additional regions will open.
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, we will wait until our funding gets locked down in the commission, and we will reevaluate, in December or so to see how much we have and see which additional regions. Obviously, we would go first to the 2 unfunded, but depending on how much money we have, could do more. But at this time, that's unclear. So please just stay tuned until December, January or so for an announcement on what is the expected annual funding for each region. That is not something we will be planning. Our, again, budget at the CEC Commission is approved each year, so we can't tell you how much we're getting next year for block grants until about this time every year in late Q3 or Q4. So that's a harder question to answer, but we do know, obviously, there's a lot of potential funding up in the air for EV chargers from the state of California. So we are optimistic of lots of money coming in, but we can't predict the future at this time until it's law and assigned to us. So again, Q1 next year, hopefully more information.
Thanks, Brian. Question for you, Fidel. The Golden State Priority Project is just the DAC LAC part of CALeVIP. Is that correct? Is that all the funding for CALeVIP?
Yes, so the Golden State Priority Project will be the disadvantaged community, low-income community focused project moving forward under this new application window selection methodology. So we'll, as Brian mentioned, pending future authorizations of funding, we'll continue allocating funding to this project, specifically for disadvantaged communities and low-income communities. The plan is to eventually launch a subsequent project with open to all areas of California, including disadvantaged communities and low-income communities. We're just starting with the focus of disadvantaged communities and low-income communities.
And if I can add on that again, so building off our May 12th workshop, the plan is really to do these 2 projects and cover multiple counties at once, or the whole state if possible, depending on our funding availability. But it's not going to be like our previous 13 projects where we just release for a couple of counties at a time. These 2 projects, again, the priority project for the whole state, but DACs only, will be one that we plan, hopefully, to have multiple windows over years and years, just continue pumping money in here as possible, as well as project 2, which would be the whole state, not DAC or regular sites, fully available, and same thing, pumping money continuously into all of these 2 projects. We'll analyze our participation and everything else, but after that, we would be confident that if it goes well, we'd only need these 2 projects and we would not launch any specific projects unless the data really defines, hey, we have a need. And then the CEC will say, well, do we need to do it under a block grant or do we need to do it under solicitation? But only 2 projects where requirements would likely stay the same. Then we just continually add funding to it over time.
Thanks, Brian. Next question to Fidel. Fidel, is the September 1st, 2022 the cost start date for all 4 projects or just the projects that were announced today?
That's a very good question. I think we're still coordinating with the Energy Commission to determine. I think that is a very good idea. But maybe Brian, I'll let you chime in, see if you have additional thoughts.
Sure. Yeah, and again, I would caution on the word projects again, because we're saying there's only going to be really 2 projects with multiple releases or funding windows. For the time being, as Fidel said, we haven't thought about that. So for the time being, I would default to saying the September 1st is only for the 2 regions and this release of the $30 million that we are talking about today. When we announce the other 2 regions being eligible, we will consider that cost date of when costs and construction or costs can be incurred. But to be safe right now, I am not going to speak for the future. So I'd say to be safe, don't assume 9/1 is the date for the future 2 regions at this time.
Thank you. Fidel, for chargers, registration is submitted after 11/15. Is it not going to be registered for the first project?
No, it will still be registered for the first project. The distinction for the November 15th date is just at opening of the application window, so you have certainty that it will be available during the application window for selection. But as Brian mentioned, that does not preclude the ability to swap out chargers later on or to continue adding chargers during the application window so that you can still submit your application with the charger that you desire. The November 15th is mostly an administrative date for us so that we can ensure it's displaying correctly and do all of our quality assurance on the back end to ensure everything is working properly. So that's mainly for application window launch availability.
Thank you. Brian, question for you. Is energy storage covered under the incentive in alignment with the NEVI program?
Yes, it is an eligible cost. Again, tying directly to the chargers and not, for example, also benefiting a building or any other load. It needs to be directly tied to separately metered EV chargers and the full system there. Similar with solar panels, they are eligible. We know they are a high cost, but the solar panels as well would need to be only directly tied to the chargers and the meter for that, separate from any buildings. So yes, energy storage is available. It's not going to be an added rebate, so make sure you're considering your costs and construction build out appropriately.
Great. Fidel, question for you. Just to clarify, only sites with a minimum of 450 kW connectors will be eligible for the rebate. Is that correct?
Mostly correct. It's true you need at least 450 kilowatt connectors on your site for the site to be eligible. However, the caveat is that all 4 need to be capable of outputting the 150 kW at the same time. So essentially you need to have 600 kilowatts of capacity on site to provide power to all 4 at the same time at the rebated power level.
Great, thank you. Brian, question for you. Can you stack rebates with other grants or programs?
So yes and no. You can stack with POU programs and other utilities. I believe the IOUs are stackable as well. I'm not going to speak for level 2 stacking at this time. We're only talking about the fast chargers. Anything you do stack with, of course, will be considered into your payment. So we're not going to double pay, obviously. And costs can go up, all your stacking can go up to what your costs are 100%. We're not going to allow profiting. The no part would be there's no stacking with active CEC agreements, where if you have a grant agreement for installing chargers from another award, you cannot stack the CALeVIP rebates with those grant awards. If you have a completed project, say you did it a year ago or et cetera, and it's a closed out project, you can go back and utilize stub outs or add more chargers to those previously funded sites.
Great. Fidel, question for you. Are multifamily housing sites eligible?
No, multifamily sites are not eligible for DC fast charger rebates. That's not to say they won't be eligible for any rebates. They will most likely have to go through the Communities in Charge program or any of our current CALeVIP programs with available funding.
Yeah, I'll just note as well to that last part, CALeVIP's initial 13 projects still have, some of those still have lots of level 2 funding available. So if you are interested in a multi-unit dwelling, definitely look for our project regions and find the county that you're interested in and see if it has funding. But there is, I don't know the exact dollar amount, but there's a hefty amount of level 2 funding overall still available.
Thank you. Fidel, how much rebate would a 300 kW dual port charger receive, which is capable of charging 2 vehicles simultaneously at 150 kW each?
Okay, so this means that the guaranteed output is 150 kilowatts and there are 2 active connectors. So that model would be eligible for 2 rebates at the 150 kilowatt rebate tier. So that means the charger is eligible to have 50% of its total installation cost covered, up to a cap of $110,000, which is 55,000 times the 2 eligible rebates.
And I just add that you can't just install one, so you'd have to do 2 of those 300 kW chargers. And so your total award at minimum would be that 220,000.
Thank you. Brian, can you explain the other funding stacking policy again?
You cannot stack with active CEC agreements, as CEC grant agreements typically have match, and we do not allow match to come from other CEC programs or funding opportunities. Stacking is allowed pretty much with anything else, air districts, POUs, IOUs, etc., any other source. But again, your rebate will be calculated on the costs that you come in with and other funding. And so while, again, we say 50% is the initial, you're allowed to have your other funding covered, that 50% covered by other sources, but we will not pay for anything that's been covered. So again, potentially you could get up to 100% of your costs covered. You're not going to get 101%. You're not going to get 105%. No profiting.
Thank you. Fidel, kind of a two-part question on housing parking lots. Are low-income housing parking lots eligible for chargers? And secondly, are public housing parking lots eligible for chargers?
Public housing parking lots. So I'm assuming this is meaning a public parking lot that is near housing. If so, then that is eligible. The parking lot would need to meet the 18 hours, 7 days a week, excluding holidays accessibility requirement. And like Brian said, would need to have at least those 4 150 kilowatt connectors that can charge concurrently.
Yeah, and again, I'd note maybe on that housing parking lot, if the parking lot is restricted only to residents, it will not be eligible, as these chargers must be publicly available. So the chargers have to be accessible to everyone and not only the residents.
Next question. What is the project rebate for 150 kW piece of equipment? Are there rebates associated with make ready that isn't covered in Rule 29 of the IOU? Fidel, can you start with that?
Yes, so the rebate is for 50% of your total approved costs. That total approved cost can include eligible categories such as the construction, the design, the actual infrastructure equipment itself. It just can't include permitting costs. But other than that, pretty much every other type of cost would be eligible, and this will be available on the project webpage. So the projected rebate would be for the 50% of those total costs and would be capped at $55,000 per active connector.
Fidel, I believe you are driving the slides, but if you could just very quickly go to the list of the counties within the Eastern and Central region. You can just, if you could display that quickly. And while you're doing that, I just want to point out that this presentation will be made available to everybody on the attendee list. It is also docketed in the CEC docket, and I think we've got the link on a later page. But if you could just quickly go to the slide of the counties within the Eastern and Central region.
Yes, just one moment.
Thank you for that. Brian, a question for you. Can California utility incentives be used with incentives in this program?
Yes, so that again ties into the stacking that we allow. Previously, CALeVIP level 2 projects would not allow stacking, but for the fast chargers, we are allowing stacking. Again, double counting costs will not be allowed, so anything the utility pays for will not be covered by the CEC's CALeVIP's portion.
Thank you. Question for Fidel. For dual port stations that can charge simultaneously and split powers if two cars are plugged in, will this remain eligible? For instance, for example, a 200 kW to one car and 100 kW for the other car. Does the site host have to disable the second connector or only allow one car to charge at a time? Fidel, do you want?
No, if the power is split 200 kW to one connector and 100 kW to the other connector, then the 200 kW connector would be considered an active connector and would be eligible for rebates. The 100 kW connector would not, so the calculation would be dependent on the number of 200 kW connectors that are on the site.
And we just want to confirm with everyone that your equipment, if this is the case that you're having chargers that will be power sharing, or say you have a 200 kW charger that could simultaneously charge normally, there needs to be documentation on the invoice for those chargers that proves that you have disabled one of the connectors if you chose to, so that it would be eligible. Because again, if you have a 200 kW charger with two simultaneous, then unless you're doing a 150 and a 50, it wouldn't be eligible. And so we'll need verification to prove what the shipped charger is capable of and meeting our requirements.
I see. I think I misunderstood that question. I thought someone had a 300 kW charger with one connector providing 200 kW of power and the other one providing 100 kW of power. So yes, if you have the 200 kW charger and it splits two ways, neither connector would be eligible. It needs to provide minimum 150 kilowatts of power at all times.
Thank you for that, Fidel. Fidel, are two continuous parcels eligible as separate sites, or would they be considered one site?
So that depends on the use of the parcels. So if both parcels are serving the same building, same type of population for the same purpose, then those two parcels would be considered the same site. So if you have questions like that, that's the kind of that's the type of question you can reach out to us so that we can make sure your application is all cleaned up and ready to go when you're submitting before the application window closes. Peter, if you're speaking, you might be on mute.
Yeah, sorry, let me repeat that. If final utility design is not required because there is an existing electrical service, will the project still qualify for Tier 1 priority, ready to build?
Yes, if you have 600 kilowatts of extra capacity on site and there doesn't need to be any service upgrades, then yes, we would consider that. We would just need a letter or some form of confirmation that that is the case. And then we would consider that jointly with your issued permit as a ready to construct application.
Thank you, Fidel. Fidel, another one for you. Will the rebate cover all construction costs for additional parking lots, curbs, etc.?
Yes, all costs associated with the installation of the charger. This includes any work needed to comply with ADA requirements, striping and signage. All of those costs can be included as they would be considered part of the installation of the charging station as a whole. However, if you have costs for say this new development project, only the costs associated with the charging station can be considered, and the cost of the larger project could not be considered as serving that charging station.
Thank you, Fidel. Brian, in the example of a charger being decommissioned and no longer operable, will there be an issue if a manufacturer replaces it with one that's not on the list? Will this affect the data sharing compliance?
Yeah, so any charger funded by CALeVIP has to have 5 years of data reporting to CSC's CALeVIP program and the Energy Commission in turn. You will not be able to replace a charger with a non-eligible charger. So if you're 1 year in and for some horrible reason the charger breaks down or etc., you will need to replace it with the similar charger that still meets all the requirements. If it's found that that is not the case, there likely will be some clawback provisions where repayment would be necessary, as the agreement that your application terms and conditions with CSE will be a legal document stating you are complying with these requirements for 5 years.
Thank you. Fidel, how do you determine the cost of the other connectors? Our stations is not priced by connector.
I assume this means one of the connectors that doesn't meet that minimum KW requirement. And the answer is we're not considering the cost of the single connector. It's still the cost of the whole installation, right? It's just the determination of how much rebate funding we are reserving for you is determined on the capabilities of each connector. So you can still submit the overall costs for that charger because that charger needs to be installed as a whole for that 150 kW minimum connector to be operable on the site, so that the whole cost would still be eligible to be covered by the rebate. It's just not a consideration when we are considering how much money to reserve for your rebate.
Thank you, Fidel. Can you tell me when you anticipate publishing grants approved for those accepted in the first round of funding?
Yeah, so our commitment is to finish processing all of the applications and confirm funding reservation with you within 30 days of that application window closing. And we would also inform those that do not receive funding and communicate any additional reason for why they weren't selected, be it there just wasn't enough funding, you were too far back in line, you submitted a duplicate application for the same address, et cetera, et cetera.
And I'll build on that just from the word I heard in the question of publishing. We will not be publishing the names of the awardees or the addresses, etc. The applicant will be notified and they will know, but there will not be a master list or a notice of proposed awards for every application.
Fidel, question for you. Can you please confirm if prevailing wages is required?
Yes, prevailing wage is required for all CALeVIP projects.
And again, that is a requirement for any publicly funded project, which CALeVIP is.
Fidel, question for you. If the project location is self-powered or the project site is not connected to the utility grid, is the site going to be eligible for the CALeVIP incentives?
I have some thoughts, but I'm going to let Brian respond to this one.
That's a tough one. So we'll have to, I believe we initially said it has to be hardwired to the grid. We did not dictate if it's 3-phase or et cetera, if you're using energy storage, but we believe at some level your system will need to have grid connection. If you're using those batteries, that would be acceptable. But again, we need to be assured that at all times that system is going to meet the 150 kW. So you would have to have your batteries and your regeneration size appropriately, so you can always be delivering 150 kW if per connector, depending on how many connectors you have at all times of highest demand. So I'd say reach out to CSE for more information, and we'd like to talk and hear more about what you're thinking.
Thanks, Brian. Question for you, Fidel. If the project or project location is in a low-income region per California Climate Investment Priority Populations and the CSE 4.0 map, is that project located going to be eligible for this project?
Yes, the California Climate Investments Priority Populations map uses the same exact definitions that we do. So any census tract that is designated as a priority population on that map is one that is eligible for our project, as long as it is within the regions we are funding for this specific application window, which is the Central region, and the Eastern region.
And I'd just potentially add, I can't recall off the top of my head, but I think that map shows regions that are located within a half a mile of a DAC, which those would not be eligible. So it would have to be the DAC, disadvantaged community, or the low income community colors, which tribal as well, tribal land is now part of disadvantaged communities. But the half mile, if the map does show half mile from one, those are not eligible site types or regions.
Thank you. Fidel, question for you. There will be many projects within the same tier. What would be the evaluation criteria to get awarded?
So it'll be a random selection. Our team is building a script that will randomly select projects from a specific tier until either all funding is exhausted or all the projects within that tier have been awarded funding. So we can provide a more in-depth explanation of that once it is finalized, but that is essentially how the selection will happen.
And Fidel, is there a date by which you expect all funding to be committed?
By committed, I am assuming that is that all $30 million have been allocated to the applicants, and that is within 30 days of the application window closing. So if the application window is opening in January and is going for 45 days, and then it'll close, and then after 30 days, we'll issue the notices of award, and we will, that means we're in like March, April timeframe for all of the funding to be fully reserved and communicated to all the applicants.
Fidel, is there a draft of what an application will look like? What available resources will be made available?
There's not yet a draft we can publish of what the application looks like, but we are planning additional webinars to continue guiding you through this process, including what you'll need for your application, key things to look for, and then more discussion about that construction progress tracker.
Yeah,
So be on the lookout for the additional webinars.
Yeah, and I'll just build on that to say a good starting point is to review our applications from previous projects. We are trying to simplify it to take out information or questions that weren't necessarily relevant at the time of application. So we are trying to make it a easier initial application and see where the other questions we may collect during the project. But steps likely will still be agreeing to the terms and conditions, selecting your equipment, and then telling us about your installation itself, the site, who it is, et cetera, and then uploading the required documents that are detailed here as well. So as Fidel said, we'll have more information, but we are trying to make it more simplified.
Thank you. Fidel, can we submit DC fast chargers through the old platform if we're already members within the EV chargers listed?
Yes, you certainly can. However, we will be eventually using a new platform for equipment to help give you better visibility into what chargers you have eligible or you have submitted, and be better able to modify certain fields within them and just give you more control over your equipment submissions. So eventually we'll be moving it to a new platform. You're still welcome to submit through the old platform and we'll communicate, or you can reach out to us at the EV expert email within the slides, and we can take it from there.
Thank you, Fidel. Fidel, if we apply for more than one site, Do we need to submit an application for each site?
Yes, you need to submit an application for each specific site. And just a reminder, we're only funding one application per site.
Fidel, will extensions be granted on a case-by-case basis as they are continued delays with the AHJs and supply chain delays?
Yes, the exact process through which we will grant extensions is still being finalized, but it's certainly something we are cognizant of as there continue to be a high amount of delays with AHJs and supply chains, and in some cases the utility process can take a very lengthy amount of time. So we are cognizant of that, and when these types of delays are outside of your control, we will do the best we can to accommodate that, subject to the upcoming extension process.
And I just want to add to that all of this was greatly considered when we were shaping our requirements for these 2.0 projects and the tiers that we're using for. CALeVIP's previous projects was more loose, I would say, and what we saw was a lot of applicants coming in still considering if they're going to do the project. We don't want those applications anymore. We're looking for applications that are determined and have already mainly began work. Obviously, if you've seen tier 1 and tier 2, we're looking for people that are dedicated and know they're going to complete these installations. So there's the higher requirements already where the permit submittals. There's also more legislature stuff happening, assembly bills, to hopefully speed up this processing. We don't know how those will look yet, but we're hoping permitting will be done quicker. And then on the equipment side, yes, we understand there are supply chain issues. And that's why, again, we're hoping you know the chargers you're going to use and order them ahead of time. Order your switchgear ahead of time and be ready for that, where I believe it's 60 days after you're notified of your reservation, we're going to be asking for proof of ordering your chargers and equipment. So all of that, we're pushing for higher requirements for higher quality installations. But as Fidel noted, items outside of the applicant's control will be considered, but we don't want to see something coming in 1 month prior to your deadline saying, oh, something just happened that we sat on for a while. That's not going to happen. But again, outside your control will be considered.
Great. I think we're down to our final 2 questions. Fidel, question for you. What information was made public about grantees and when?
Sure. So as Brian mentioned, we won't be publishing information about individual grantees or the applications that have been funded. What we do publish is aggregated data about our rebates and where they are and where they are in the process of installation. So we currently do that with CALeVIP installations on our website, calevip.org, under the rebate statistics dashboard, and we'll continue providing those statistics. And in terms of providing notice of the rebate reservation, as we mentioned, we'll provide that within 30 days of the application window closing. Specifically to the individuals receiving the funding, those notices won't be public.
Great. And a question I have here is, what's the best way to see if site is in a DAC or LAC area? Fidel, do you want to take that?
Sure. Probably the CARB maps, priority population. It's called the California Climate Investments Priority Populations Map. There is a link to it within the web page for this project, which is now live, and you can access it via the link on the slides. and we'll also send all of the attendees an email after this webinar with that link as well, so that you have access to that webpage.
We actually got two quick ones in here. Fidel, is low-income housing households treated the same as LIC?
I'll have to double check the definition that is in that map. I believe it is the census tracts, either defined by that 80% or those limits in my previous slide. I don't believe it considers individual households, but that is something I will double check on and communicate on.
And I think the final question is for Brian. If equipment is ordered ahead of time because of supply chain issues, would this mean that it's still eligible for rebate costs?
Yes, again, the date for this first release, we are allowing eligible costs to start today, September 1st, 2022. So even if we plan on launching in January, window close in March-ish, and then you figure out 30 days later in April, hey, I have been awarded. If you have an invoice that you would like to have towards your eligible project costs, it can be dated September 1st, 2022 or later. Again, noting that physical construction cannot have begun until the window closes. So all your planning, you can order equipment, site designs, etc. All of that can start being incurred today.
Great, thank you. There are some other questions about upcoming webinars. We are planning one, potentially two upcoming webinars that will deal with the application process, or maybe a walkthrough of our some additional tools that we have. So look for more notification of those webinars to come up. I think that is the bulk of the questions. Fidel, I don't know if you're still on point for the slides. We can just point out some links here that we have. Could you hit the next slide? Yeah, so there is on the CALeVIP.org. This material is available on a specific area here. Follow the link. You can contact us for additional questions at the evexpert@energycenter.org. This material is also available on the docket number listed there, as well as the May 12th information that we provided. So all of that information is there, and there is an area where you could submit comments on that. Please reach out to us for any additional questions or input. That'd be greatly appreciated. And there is a series of other resources that are available. I won't read through this thing, but there is more resources that will be made available for the project.
And Peter, real quick, I just want to highlight as well, since I saw the poll question of what's your experience in installing chargers, I just want to highlight CALeVIP Connects real fast for anyone that doesn't know what it is. It's a resource on the CALeVIP website that, think of it as like a phone book or Yelp, a platform basically of all companies, not all, companies that work along installing chargers, private or public, etc. So you go to CALeVIP Connects, find a service provider page, and you can click on what are you looking for. Are you looking for chargers? Okay, click on the manufacturer's profile button. If you're looking for contractors or installers, you can find those. And you click on one of the profile types, and it will list all these companies that have created profiles to pretty much advertise their business. So if you're still in that planning phase, this is a great resource to start looking at the different chargers that are eligible. The page has companies that may not be eligible for CALeVIP, so really make sure you're looking at our eligible equipment chargers. But you can go research manufacturers, find the one that you like, and then you can also start looking for contractors in your area. And so we want, again, quality applications. So really recommend you start your planning process now. And we believe this resource will try and make things easier than going on Google and typing in EV charger manufacturer and getting 1,000 responses. We can kind of narrow that down for you on CALeVIP Connects. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for that, for the panel of Fidel and Brian for answering the questions. Again, the material is available on the docket as well as the site that CALeVIP.org is available. And we thank everyone's attention here. Please reach out if you have any questions or need follow-up. That concludes the webinar.